not really sure what's going on with my hair today, but let's just roll with it. Hey everyone, I hope you're well. This is another in my dating advice series. I have been through a lot of heartbreak. I feel like, having been through quite a lot of heartbreak in my life, I'm at a good place to offer some good solid dating advice to you guys. This particular subject is one that I dealt with last year, and I feel like I've come out the other side and have lots of like tips and tricks on how to deal with it. So hopefully this will help some of you that are unfortunately in the same position. So this is my video on tips on living with an ex-partner. I lived with an ex for 2 months last year, and not gonna lie, it was probably the worst 2 months of my life, because not only was I heartbroken and my like view of my life path that I thought I was going to take completely like broke and smashed into a million pieces, but then I also had to live with my ex, and it was just, as you can imagine, not nice. So I have written a list in my bullet journal of tips I would tell you guys to definitely take on if you're in the same situation. So in no particular order, my first tip would be to set up separate living spaces. You do not want to be sharing a bed with your ex after you've broken up. I can't think of anything worse. I was very lucky in my place because I have 2 bedrooms. I had an office and a bedroom. I slept in my office from the day we broke up. Like, we did not share a bed once, and I was so grateful for that. It just meant that I could sadly cry myself to sleep without being in front of him, which was something I did pretty much every day whilst we were living together. You kind of have to stop acting like you're in a relationship, or it's just gonna hurt even more. So to separate your living spaces as much as possible, whether that mean one of you sleep on the sofa, or one of you try and surf couch for a couple of nights a week, or doing turns or something like that. You just need to have your separate space. My tip 2 would be just don't have any physical contact. One of you will really regret it if you end up kissing each other or having sex with each other after you've broken up. Might feel great at the time, but it's just going to make you feel 10 times worse afterwards. It might be difficult, it might be tempting, but don't. Tip 3 would be to kind of work out chores around the house. I am going to put my hands up here, I was shit at this. I continued doing all the things for my ex-partner that I had done whilst we were in a relationship, because I loved him so much, and because I was so heartbroken, and because I wanted it to be as kind of civil as possible. So I continued, I cannot believe I did this, I continued cooking dinner for us both after we'd broken up, and he happily sat there and ate it and then went off to bed and like went on Tinder. And I was just like, no, do not do that. Do your food shopping separately, cook your meals separately. One of you take on the washing up, one of you take on washing, or like just divide things up. Either make it very simple, like you both clean up your own separate mess, you both wash your own clothes, you both wash your own separate dishes. Draw a line under doing all and everything for your ex, because you don't have to anymore. They are not your problem anymore. Their dirty pants should not be left to you to clean. That is something that I really regret doing still when I lived with my ex. Tip 4 would be to try and keep your distance as much as possible. This is a pretty obvious one. The more social you are outside of the house, the more you're going to be happy, because you're spending less time with them. So I am quite an introvert. I love time by myself. I love evenings at home. There's nothing more perfect in my head than an evening at home, but I became the biggest social butterfly after my ex and I had broken up. I started saying yes a lot more. I became a yes person. I went out and met up with friends that I hadn't in ages. I just took opportunities as I could, because I did not want to be in the house with him, and it definitely helped. It also helps to take your mind off of your situation at home, and even if it's just going to the pub with your friend and just like crying to her about it, it's so much better than sitting in your room crying to yourself about it, which is what I also did a lot. Tip 5 would be to be as civil and amicable as possible. My experience of this, we were very civil with each other, and it really hurt, I'm not gonna lie, because it almost felt like we were just best mates living together, and that itself was a really terrible thing, because that made me realise that we did get on so well, and that made breaking up even harder, because I knew that we could be great together, but it just was not working. So there's a real balance with keeping things civil, not arguing all the time, not going around in circles about where your relationship went wrong all the time, being polite to each other, but also keeping boundaries and keeping a distance with it all. I remember for a while when we would sit down to talk, it would come up about us and where we went wrong and what had happened and how we still felt and stuff, and that just wasn't nice. So I think just limiting the time you spend with each other as much as possible is only a good thing. One of the most practical things you're going to have to do is decide what happens next. Basically, in terms of like who's moving out, who's staying. I know this obviously can be a lot harder depending on if you own a property together, or I can't even imagine, like my heart goes out to all of you who are in that situation and feel trapped in that. But if you are renting together, you just need to make the decision of who's staying, who's going, whether you're both going, and my biggest tip would be to set a date that you want everything done by. In my case, I was like, I cannot bear to live with him for more than 2 months. Even that seemed like impossible at the time. So we set a date at the beginning of February, which was when things needed to happen by, and I decided to stay in the flat because I've got too much stuff and I work here and I'm close to my family, and he was more than happy to just up and go. And by fixing a date in place, that made it a lot more easier to kind of get the ball rolling with things. One of my biggest tips would be, and I really mean this wholeheartedly, if you take one thing from this video, let it be this tip: do not discuss dates with each other. It's as simple as that. This is another mistake that I made, and I was quite, because I think I'm just such an open and honest person anyway, and I wanted to appear to him to be as cool and collected and fine with the whole thing as possible, even though I was not and I was crumbling inside. I wanted to appear just like really chilled and laid back so that maybe he might fall in love with me and that everything might change again. So we started talking about dating, and it was so destructive for my mental health. There was one point where he was like, I'm going on a date tonight, and I remember texting him in tears being like, if you do not come home tonight, I know that you're having sex with someone else. And I said that to him, and I was like, for the sake of us living together and out of respect for me, I urge you, please do not do that, because he was out there moving on, sticking his thing in someone else, which is just not something you want to think about at that time. Do not talk about dates with each other. I did it as well. It was partly my fault, I'll put my hand up. I was probably the one that initiated the dating chat. And I was actively dating just because I was so heartbroken. If you watched my last Dates with Kate video, I will leave a link to it down below. I was going on those dates with that guy whilst I was living with my ex, and I hid it from him as much as I could, but it got to a point where it was pretty obvious. Do not enter discussion about dates or dating or anything like that at all. My last 2 tips are kind of ones that I want you to feel better about the whole situation with. So try and get as excited as possible as you can about the future, because think of it this way, it's a whole fresh start for you. Your life is rubbish at the moment, or it might be amazing. It might have been a relationship that you really needed to get out of, but I think it's definitely helpful to start getting excited for the future. So one of the things I did, and this is just a really little thing, but it really gave me something to look forward to, is I went to Primark and I bought myself some new bed sheets, and I was so excited for the day that he moved out so I could turn the mattress over and put my brand new bed sheets on my bed, and they were going to be my bed sheets, my fresh start, my thing that I chose out. And that was really symbolic for me, even though it was something so little. That for me began the start of thinking about the future and everything that has to come. I hope that makes sense. Remember that this is just a bad phase. It won't be forever, and you will come out of it stronger and happier. My final tip would be to know that that is all it was ever meant to be. Your relationship was never meant to be anything more than that. And I know hearing that can be really devastating. One of my best friends told me that over dinner after we shortly ended, and I cried hysterically at the thought of it, because I was like, no, we were meant to be together, he was the one, this was my life. But she was like, Katie, no, this was all it was ever meant to be up until this point. And after a while I kind of took some faith in that it wasn't my fault that it didn't work out. There was nothing I could have done, and there are better things to come. I really hope this has helped some of you who are in or have been in the same situation. I can't even express to you how much I know it hurts, and I know that the situation is shit. But as someone who's been through it and come out the other side, and I'm so happy, I know that you guys can do it. If you ever need any more videos on advice, send me your topics in and I'm more than happy to make videos around that. If you've ever been in a situation like this, I'd love for you to leave your top tips down below as well. I think it'd be really nice to get a conversation rolling about this so we know that we're all not alone. I love you lots, guys, and I'll see you soon. Mwah!